All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about this invisible force that pretty much runs your entire online life, whether you're trying to buy concert tickets or just, logging into an app. It's called rate limiting, and honestly, it's the main reason the internet doesn't just fall over.
Yeah, you've totally been there, right? You're scrambling to get those tickets for that huge show, the countdown hits 0, you click, and bam, the site just dies. That feeling of frustration? That's exactly what rate limiting is trying to prevent. So what's actually happening behind the curtain that causes that meltdown?
Well, it turns out it's rarely just one single thing. Good systems go down for a whole bunch of reasons. Sometimes, yeah, it's malicious. You've got brute force attacks trying to guess passwords or just spamming the system. But a lot of the time, it's not even intentional. You could have a buggy script that just goes wild sending requests. Or hey, maybe your app just went viral. The end result is always the same though, a massive flood of traffic that the system just can't handle. And that can create this awful cascading failure, where one overloaded service starts taking down everything else it's connected to.
And if you're a developer, or maybe just really unlucky, you've probably seen this number before, 429. It's the system's polite way of saying, whoa, you're hitting us way too fast. Please just slow down a bit. This is the classic signal that, yep, you've just run into a rate limit.
So what's the solution to all this chaos? Simple. You bring in a traffic cop, a piece of the system whose entire job is to stand at the intersection, direct the flow of requests, and make sure everything doesn't grind to a halt. And that, my friends, is the rate limiter.
Okay, so at its heart, rate limiting isn't really about punishing users. It's all about protecting the system's health. It's basically a simple set of rules that says you can make this many requests in this amount of time. You go over that, the rate limiter steps in to make sure the backend services don't get completely swamped.
Now, here's a quick but super important point. People often use rate limiting and throttling to mean the same thing, but they're not quite the same. Rate limiting is a hard no. You hit the limit, your request is rejected. End of story. Throttling is a little kinder. It's more of a controlled slowdown. It might stick your requests in a queue to be processed later at a steady pace. Think of it this way. Rate limiting is being turned away at the door of a full club, while throttling is just being asked to wait in line.
Okay, so how does the system even know who to put the brakes on? Well, there are two main ways to do it. You can track people by their user ID. This is awesome because it's super precise for logged-in users. The big problem? It's totally useless for things like a login page where nobody's logged in yet. The other way is to track by IP address. This catches all requests, which is great, but it can be a bit of a blunt instrument. You could accidentally block an entire office or a university just because one person's script went haywire. So a lot of times, the best solution is some kind of smart hybrid of the two.
All right, we know what it is and why we need it. So how does this traffic cop actually make its split-second decisions? Let's dive into the really cool part, the algorithms that power this whole thing.
You'll find a lot of different algorithms out there, but they pretty much all fall into two big families. First, you have the bucket methods. Just picture requests needing to grab some kind of permit or a token from a bucket. Then you have the window methods, which are all about just counting up every request that happens inside a specific slice of time.
First up, let's talk about the token bucket. Imagine a bucket that's constantly being refilled with tokens at a nice steady pace. Every time a request comes in, it has to spend one token to get through. If the bucket is empty, sorry, your request gets rejected. But here's the really clever part. This whole setup naturally allows for bursts. If you've been quiet for a while, those tokens start to pile up in the bucket, so you can send a whole bunch of requests all at once when you really need to.
Then we have the leaky bucket. This one works in the opposite way. All the incoming requests are just dumped into a queue. That's our bucket. The system then processes those requests at a constant, fixed rate, like water leaking steadily out of the bottom. This is amazing for smoothing out unpredictable traffic. Think about a video transcoding service. You might get 1,000 videos uploaded all at once, in a huge burst, but the service just works through them at a nice, manageable pace.
Okay, so now for our window algorithms. Let's start with the most basic one, the fixed window counter. It's super simple to grasp, which is great, but it has one huge and kind of obvious flaw that can be exploited.
And here is that flaw in all its glory. Let's say your limit is 5 requests per minute. A clever user could send 5 requests at the 59-second mark, and then, 2 seconds later, send 5 more requests right at the start of the next minute. See what happened? In the system's eyes, each 1-minute window is perfectly valid. But in reality, you just got hammered with 10 requests in 2 seconds. That's double the rate you intended to allow.
So,
To fix that glaring hole, we need a much smarter approach, the sliding window. Instead of these rigid fixed blocks of time, the window of what we're counting is constantly moving forward with every tick of the clock. Now, there are a couple main flavors of this. There's the sliding window log, which is incredibly accurate because it tracks the exact timestamp of every single request, but it uses a lot of memory. Then there's the sliding window counter, which is a clever hybrid that gives you a really good balance of accuracy and performance without all the overhead.
Okay, I know that was a lot of algorithms to throw at you, so here's a quick side-by-side. The main takeaway is that there's no single best algorithm. Each one has its trade-offs. Token Bucket is awesome for allowing bursts. Leaky Bucket is all about creating a predictable, steady flow. And Sliding Window gives you the best accuracy, but it's a bit more complex. The right choice really just depends on what problem you're trying to solve.
Okay, so we've got the how down with the algorithms. Let's zoom back out and talk about the where. Where do you actually put this logic in a real-world system?
You've really got two main options here. You could build the logic right into each individual service. It's simple, for sure. But the big drawback? A huge traffic spike still has to travel all the way through your network to reach your service just to get blocked. That's why the much more common pattern you see today is to have it as a dedicated layer, something like an API gateway. It acts like a shield for your whole system, stopping that bad traffic at the front door before it ever gets a chance to cause trouble.
So let's walk through what a typical request looks like. It comes in from a user and wham, it hits the API gateway first. The gateway does a lightning-fast check against the high-speed database, something like Redis, to see if that user is still within their allowed limit. If everything looks good, the request gets passed right along to the back end. If not, the gateway doesn't even bother the back-end service. It just immediately sends back that 429 too many requests error. Clean and efficient.
So to wrap things up, let's talk about why this all matters in the real world. Because rate limiting is one of those invisible foundational pieces of tech that does so much more than just stopping bad guys.
Honestly, you interact with this stuff all day long, every day. It's what stops brute force attacks from guessing your password. It's about fairness. When a site goes viral, a token bucket approach can keep it alive for some users instead of crashing for everyone. Businesses use it to enforce their pricing tiers, like you get 200 free API calls a month. And it's huge for cost control. If you're using an expensive AI model, you might use a leaky bucket strategy to ensure you only make a steady, predictable number of calls so you don't get a surprise bill.
And here's a little pro tip for anyone building systems. The best rate limiting isn't just a brick wall. It's about communication. The best systems actually tell developers why their request was blocked and, more importantly, when they can try again. They usually stick this info right in the response headers. It helps everyone build better, more resilient software.
So, when you boil it all down, rate limiting is this fundamental balancing act. On one hand, it's the guardian that protects the services we all depend on, making sure they're stable and fair. But on the other hand, by its very nature, it also draws the invisible lines and sets the rules for our entire digital world, quietly shaping how and how often we get to interact with, well, everything.